Morning. Happy Easter. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're here today. We celebrate something significant, the most significant day in history. Today we celebrate Jesus rose from the dead. He is risen. Yeah. So, none of us are surprised by that. No one stops and goes, wait, what? No one's surprised. We've heard it before. And the danger with something you've heard before and you know is sometimes you can take it for granted. You overlook, you become familiar with something. But the thing is, and this is incredibly important, if you're not a follower of Jesus or if you are, either one, you need to hear this. The Christian faith is not about what Jesus did or said before he died. It's about what he did after he died. He rose from the dead. So everything about his life deserves our attention because this day in history changes everything, and it should change us. It changed the people around him. However, on that first day, we're not surprised to hear he is risen. Some of us came from a tradition where we respond, he is risen indeed. No one stops and goes, wait, could you say that again? I don't think most of us, if not all of us, have heard that before. But on that first Easter Sunday morning, they weren't expecting that. The tomb was not crowded that morning set for an Easter celebration. They weren't expecting Jesus to show up, even though Jesus said he would do it. And so when they showed up to the tomb, it wasn't crowded, but their minds were probably crowded with lots of questions, doubts, fears, uncertainty, and unknown. They were fearful, grieving, hopeless, and not sure what to do next. And I can relate to that because there are times in life where something hits me, and even though I'm a person of faith, I kind of knocks me back and I don't understand. And I can become fearful and grieving and hopeless as well. Maybe you feel that way too. Life is hard, and maybe it's left you with some questions, maybe even some doubts. Or maybe someone in your life right now or recently has gone through a season where they had doubts or questions and you're not sure what to do with those. Well, today I want to look at the risen Jesus, what happened that Sunday morning and after through the eyes of somebody who life had left them with questions and doubts, specifically about Jesus. And this was one of his followers. It's a guy that's very well known. His name is Thomas. And in John 20, if you have a Bible, you can turn there. If not, I'll share mine with you. I'll share it out loud. Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, he had a nickname. And Didymus means twin. So he had a twin. Thomas, also a.k.a. Didymus, that means he was a twin. Which Thomas are we talking about? The one with the twin. Okay. He was one of the 12 disciples, and he was not with the disciples when Jesus came and showed himself and said, here I am, I've risen. And they were celebrating, and so they go and tell Thomas, we have seen the Lord. And they say, he is risen. And he does not respond, he is risen indeed. He goes, no, I don't get it. I don't believe it. And it earns him another nickname, not given to him by Jesus, but by us, of Doubting Thomas. They said, we've seen the Lord. And he says to them, unless I see the nail marks, I want to see it. I want to touch the nail marks. I want to put my hand into his side. The thing where that was basically the kill confirmation, thrusting the spear into Jesus' side. Once they did that, that's how they knew he was dead. He goes, I want to put my hand into that. I want to see it. I want to touch it, because seeing is believing for me. Unless I see it, I will not believe. He's pretty dug in on this because he doesn't say, if I could just see this, I'll believe. He kind of gives it in the negative expression. Unless I see that, I will not believe. This is where I'm living right now. And because of that, we've given this nickname of Doubting Thomas. Now, Jesus didn't give him that nickname. Thomas, also known as Didymus. Didymus does not mean doubting, it means twin. And Jesus loved giving nicknames, and I have friends like that. I have friends that love to give nicknames and, all the time. And Jesus gave one of his nicknames, a nickname to a guy named Peter, Simon Peter. He called him Cephas, which means the rock. Now, that's a great nickname. And then there were some others, James and John, these brothers. He gave them the nickname of Sons of Thunder. Man, that's a great nickname, right? I don't know why he gave them that nickname. Maybe it's because of their boisterous voice or their boisterous personality. Maybe they had gas. I don't know. But he gives these nicknames. But Jesus never gave a nickname. He doesn't say, We're going to call you Doubting Thomas. We did that because he doubted when everyone else saw and believed. It's like, Thomas, why couldn't you believe? You'd lived 3 years with these guys traveling. Couldn't you take their word for it? And maybe it's that Thomas's heart was so broken. And he's like, I can't let it go there again. Because sometimes our questions aren't intellectual. We have those kind of questions. I don't understand it. Sometimes they're emotional, experiential. Life hits you, and it leaves you in a place of doubt, confusion, and questioning. But the thing about Thomas, I mean, overlooked in Thomas's life, he's known for his doubt, but his courage was off the chart. And John, the disciple, knew that. Like, look at this. Maybe Courageous Thomas would be a better nickname. This is 2 weeks before Jesus is crucified on the cross. He tells his disciples, hey, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. They're going to arrest me, and they're going to kill me. Thomas, also known as Didymus, says to the rest of the disciples, he steps and says, let us also go that we may die with him. Now that's courage. Yet we call him Doubting Thomas. Maybe we should call him Courageous Doubting Thomas. Because the thing is, he was courageous enough not to say, I'll go and die with him. But when he hadn't seen it and he had struggles believing, he's like, I can't get my head and heart around this. I have some doubts. He did something that's very, very courageous. He said out loud maybe that what anybody else would have been thinking. How could that be true? I need to know. I just don't understand. He doubted out loud. And a lot of us are afraid to do that, especially in a church, which this is the last place you should be afraid to doubt out loud. Because we have this belief that doubt is toxic to our faith. And I don't believe that. As a matter of fact, I really believe doubt isn't toxic to your faith. Unexpressed and an unexplored doubt is. Thomas doubted out loud, and he wasn't scolded for it. He actually had an encounter with Jesus because of it. Sometimes it's better to voice our doubts, to doubt out loud, because you can get stuck in your doubt. And for Thomas, he doubted. That was an event. But we've given him the nickname Doubting Thomas. Doubting is an identity. It's what you do. It's who you are. That's not who he was. I really think Courageous Thomas would have been better. And for some of us, we're living our lives with an identity because of an event, of something we did or something somebody else did or something that's going on, and we're stuck there. Some of us are stuck in our doubts because we have questions, and it might be a head question or a heart question. We're just not sure. I want to challenge you to do what Thomas did and define your doubts. Where is it that you kind of look and go, I mean, I want to believe, but I'm just having a hard time with this. Or I don't understand this, or why, or what is going on. See, if you define your doubts, I think if you pull on that thread and see where it takes you and let God lead you through it, it will lead you to a deeper encounter with him. Thomas wasn't the only one who doubted. After he rose from the dead, Jesus was walking along a road, and there were two of his followers that didn't recognize him. And they're talking, and they have questions, and they heard Jesus rose from the dead, but they didn't believe it. And Jesus asked them this. Jesus said to them, why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your mind? It wasn't, notice this is very important for some of you. It was not a what question. Hey, I'm here to field your questions. What questions do you have? He asked them the why question. Why do you doubt, and why are you troubled? What's happening in here and in here? Because sometimes our doubts aren't a question. I just really want to know, can the Bible be trusted? I really want to know, if God's so good, why do bad things happen to good people? Like maybe it's not a what question. Sometimes it's a why question. I want to know why, because I see my child in pain. God, why? Where is it coming from? What's the why question? And I would encourage you to ask the why question, why am I doubting and why am I troubled, before you ask the what questions, but ask them both. Because again, sometimes our doubts aren't intellectual. Sometimes they're experiential and emotional. life is hard and doubt creeps in and questions show up and they move in and they make themselves at home, define your doubt so you can navigate your doubt. I really believe it can lead somewhere really, really significant. So Thomas, he doubted out loud. So they said, we've seen the Lord. And he said, unless I see this, I cannot believe that. And I think it really is better to doubt out loud than disbelieve in silence. Find some safe people in your life that you can go, you know what, I'm having a real hard time with this. Find some safe people to do it, to doubt out loud rather than disbelieve in silence. And you can be a believer in Jesus and still have some doubts. That's, I think, normal. At least it's been normal for me. Because what if Jesus could meet you where you doubt and where you question, where you struggle? And what if Jesus wants to lead you to a place of deeper faith and purpose? He did that for Thomas, and maybe he could do that for you too. So it's really, I think, an important exercise for you is to sit down and go, what are my doubts? What do I struggle with? And why am I doubting that? Why am I questioning that? What's driving it? And maybe defining out, what would it take for you to believe? Thomas did that. He goes, unless this, I can't that. What would it take for you to believe? And what would belief look like in your everyday life? Because here's the thing. Sometimes we get answers to our questions, and it doesn't change how we live. When Thomas got the answer to the question, spoiler alert, he gets it. When he gets the answer to his questions and has experience, it changes him profoundly. Does your belief change you? Because Jesus has that impact on people. For me, I've come to a place where I experience, and I'll be honest, like I struggle sometimes with questions. God, I don't understand what you're doing here. I don't understand why. I don't understand. But in my life, I've experienced, it's not that I've gotten enough answers. That's one side of it, on the intellectual side. But on the other side, I've experienced enough with God in my life that when something hits me hard and doubt creeps in, this is what I do. I'm going to say this statement, but I want to preface it by saying, define your doubts, deal with your doubts. Thomas did that. It's a good thing to do. But this is what I do. I doubt my doubts more than I doubt my God. Because there were seasons in my life where even though God had a very good credibility and track record in my life, I gave my doubts a lot of power. I almost looked at my doubts as more truth than what I knew to be true about God. And that's what sometimes doubt will do, is it will get your attention and take your attention off God. Define your doubts, but sometimes you need to doubt your doubts more than you doubt your God. And the longer you live as a follower of Jesus, it never becomes easy to do, but the easier it is to do. And I still explore my doubts and see where God takes me as I explore them. And next week, I'm going to show you a tool I used to do that. It was a game changer for me. It was so helpful in terms of navigating not just doubts, but belief. It was a game changer for me. And next week, I'll give you that. But what I want you to know, I really believe this to be true. With God's help, I and you can navigate my doubt, and it can strengthen my faith. Some of us are afraid to doubt out loud. Or if we doubt, we feel like we're getting it wrong. Sometimes doubt is this breadcrumb trail that leads us to a deeper truth, a deeper faith, and leads us to Jesus himself. So Thomas defined his doubts, and he waits. A week later, it's not like he said, unless I see this, and unless I touch this, I can't believe. And then Jesus walks in and goes, well, here I am. A week later, Thomas was sitting there every night, 7 sleeps, or maybe 7 non-sleep nights, as he laid awake going, could it be true? Like from everything I saw from 3 years before he died, I want this to be true. But how? The questions, the hope, and then the pulling back the hope because I don't want to stick my heart out there. I mean, all these things going on, but it was a week later of him waiting. His disciples were in the house again. This time, Thomas was with them. And though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. This is what Jesus wants for us. Peace be with you. He shows up bringing things that most of us want most in life, if not all of us want most in life. If you ask most people what they want in life, I want a peaceful life, I want to be loved, and I want happiness. And Jesus says when he shows up in our life, the fruit it produces is peace, love, joy, and more. Peace be with you. Sometimes your doubts are unsettling and they're not peaceful, but it can lead you to Jesus who brings you to a place of peace. He shows up. Peace be with you. Then he addresses Thomas. Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Notice the order of events. Here's your doubt. Let's deal with that. Make a choice to stop doubting. But that's not enough. You have to choose to believe. Look for your answer. Make a choice to stop doubting. Doubting can lead you somewhere, but eventually you make a different choice, and it's to believe. And Thomas does that, and he believes, and he responds this way, my Lord and my God. He doubted his doubts more than he doubted his God. That's where the place that if we can get to, it helps us navigate a lot of the storms of life. This was the tipping point for Thomas's life, and it could be the tipping point for yours too. Because if you have that point, if you deal with your doubt and develop a faith, when more doubts come in, you doubt your doubts more than you doubt your God. Doubt was an event, but belief is an identity. It's who I am. I believe. And sometimes you have to struggle with belief and doubt in the same, at once, in both hands. And I do believe Jesus is inviting you to explore your doubt and step forward toward him in belief, like Thomas did. Because Thomas didn't say, hey, thanks for the answer. He responded by saying, you are now my Lord. Lord means leader, in charge. Some of us, that's our doubt. I doubt I want him to be in charge. My Lord and my God, you are not just a great teacher, a great leader. You are God with us. The one who created everything, who's in charge of everything, who can navigate me through anything. You are my Lord and my God. And every one of us needs a point, just like the resurrection of Jesus is a place on the timeline of history. On the timeline of our history, is there a moment where we've turned to God and said, my Lord and my God? And you may have doubts after that. Just doubt your doubts more than you doubt your God, because when you come to a point where you can say that with confidence, it helps you navigate the ups and especially the downs of life. See, but here's the reality. I'm not afforded the same opportunity that Thomas was. If my question was, hey God, Jesus, if I could just see your hands and touch those prints and put my hands on, if I could just be hands-on, seeing would be believing for me. Can I do that? That's my question. And then I'll say, my Lord, my God, if I can do that, but I'm not given that opportunity. So what about us? What do we do? How do we navigate that? Jesus gives Thomas a promise after he says this, and it's a promise for you. For you. Jesus tells him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Seeing is believing for you. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. I may not be given the opportunity that Thomas had of touching and seeing Jesus right in front of me. But I'm given an offer of a blessing that Thomas was not. You're going to experience something significant and deeper. And the great thing is, so I can't do that. So how can I put my faith in Jesus if I can't touch him? Here's what I think this promise is about. We can believe without seeing because Thomas believed after seeing. We have this person there that was a credible eyewitness. And Thomas wasn't the only one that was able to see and touch and be around the risen Jesus. The rest of the 12 saw him too. And eventually, if that didn't happen, somebody would have cracked, right? And if Thomas were writing the story, he wouldn't have written as like, I never doubted, I believed from the first. We were around him from the beginning. He died on the cross and we just huddled around the tomb waiting for it to come out. Like, none of these guys paint themselves in a positive light. So as they tell the story of Jesus, they're like, we didn't believe it either, but we saw it and we believed. We have eyewitnesses that were there. And it changed them. These credible eyewitnesses that saw it. We have their testimony. Not just Thomas and the rest of the 12. It says there were 500 that saw the risen Jesus, of his first followers. And for me, I have the same Jesus that Thomas saw in person that wants to connect with me as I seek him. And I've gotten to the point where I go, I don't have to believe or know everything to believe in something. For me, I've experienced enough to say, my Lord and my God, you're my Lord, you're in charge. Here's my life. And that's good because you're also my God. You're the one I worship, that I follow, and that I trust. But for us, there's this blessing attached to belief when we do that. We need to express our doubt and seek answers and seek him. Because this promise is when we believe without seeing, it brings blessing. So the legacy of Thomas, it's actually pretty impressive. The faith legacy of Thomas is AKA Thomas, AKA Didymus, which means twin. But what some of us have given us the nickname of AKA Thomas, which means doubting Thomas. Really should be AKA courageous Thomas. Because when Jesus says, hey, I'm going to Jerusalem, and spoiler alert, they're going to arrest me and kill me. Only Thomas steps up and goes, we will go and die with you. That's courage. And he had courage to doubt out loud and let his doubt lead him to a belief that was even stronger than before. And the thing about Thomas, and this is why I trust what he says, because he wasn't just willing to go to Jerusalem and die with Jesus. After meeting Jesus, the risen Jesus, Thomas hears Jesus tell his disciples, go into all the world and make disciples. And Thomas said, okay. And he goes east. And he makes it all the way as far as the subcontinent of India. And people start believing in Jesus in India because of Thomas. As a matter of fact, when Marco Polo, the explorer, not the pool game, when Marco Polo brought a report back from exploring India, he gave an account in the 13th century of followers of Jesus that said, we're here because one day a guy named Thomas showed up. Not doubting Thomas, courageous Thomas, who went to India, and one day 4 soldiers escort him out of town and run him through with a spear and kill him for what he believed. You think he believed it? Before Jesus was risen from the dead, he was willing to die with Jesus. After he's risen from the dead, he's willing to die for Jesus. He had courage and conviction. And it started with him navigating his doubts. And as you navigate doubts in life, don't let it just take you to an answer. Let it take you to the person of Jesus who wants to meet with you. Let it take you to a deeper sense of belief where your belief shows up on a Monday. See, Thomas's lesson for us is that with God's help, we can navigate our doubt and it can strengthen our faith and move us to belief and action. So what I want to ask you, like, what's your next step? One of the things we say around here a lot is everybody has a next step. And your next step is probably not to take the gospel to India. What's your next step, though? How will you navigate whatever you're in right now? Based on what you heard today, based on what Thomas did, his legacy that's been left for you, what's your next step? Well, chapter 20, it goes on and it gives us a next step, a real easy one. It says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, meaning the Gospel of John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the 4 Gospels. John is the most unique because it's almost as if your college roommate wanted to tell your story. I saw a look of fear on some of your faces. – John was was the closest disciple to Jesus. And after the other three, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Luke, kind of tell their story, he said, there's something here I need to tell. And John records in his gospel too that Jesus said, the Holy Spirit will teach you what to say. And he says this in John, the Gospel of John. They're not recorded in this book. But the things that are written here, this is the purpose of the Gospel of John, that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the anointed one, the chosen one, the one sent by God, but also the Son of God, God with us. And that by believing you may have life in his name. Not just you would nod and go, I agree. But you would have life change, life to the full, peace, love, joy, conviction, courage, all grounded in a deep faith in Jesus. We all have a next step. So if that's the purpose of why John wrote his gospel, as Jesus told us the Holy Spirit prompted him to do that, your next step, here's what I want you to do. Read one chapter of John for the next 21 days. There's 21 chapters in the book. So tomorrow read chapter 1, John 1. Just read it and pray, God, I want to have a deeper faith. Maybe it's I have some questions, or maybe like I've seen enough. Whatever it is, just wherever you are, just read the Gospel of John and say, God, I want to have a deep belief and understanding of you. I want to have life in your name. Your next step is to read the Gospel of John, one chapter a day, and ask God, what's my next step? Let him lead you. The Gospel of John starts off with him approaching his disciples saying, follow me, and he leads them on this journey. Where might it lead you? And we're going to give you some help with that. Here's a way you could do that. There's a reading plan of the Gospel of John on the YouVersion Bible app. And it's 21 days, and there's some groups that will start tomorrow. There's a guys group, I'm in that. And there's a girls group. And if you sign up, you'll be put in one of those groups. And every day there's a chapter. You join the group. You read through the book of John using one chapter a day. And virtually you discuss with others. It's not like a Zoom call. It's just like there's a little devotional about what you're about to read. You read John chapter 1. Then there's the things to talk about it. You say, maybe here's what I took away from it. Or here's my question. Or don't say anything at all. But last Easter we did one of these. And that group, finished that group. And a lot of people said, let's do it again. And we're still, that group you're going to be added into is a group that started on Easter. That's still going. But for 21 days, and then it ends. If you want to get in again, you can. But 21 days, would you be willing to do that? You can go to sign up in events on our app or website, live-oak.org, and you can sign up and you'll be placed in one of those groups. Or if you're on the YouVersion Bible app and you're a guy, just message me and say, hey, I want an invite. I'll invite you. But whether it's on the app or not, read the Gospel of John, one chapter a day. And then another obvious next step for you is, what are your questions? If you have questions, intellectual, emotional, or experiential, if you have questions, questions are okay. We're about to start a series next week called Frequently Asked Questions, and we're going to talk about some of our questions about God, faith, and the Bible. And you can submit your question, and we'll talk about it if it's the majority of them. We're only doing it for 6 weeks. And I can tell you what the first 2 weeks are. One, we're going to talk about if God's good, why do bad things happen? The problem of evil in the world, as well as how do we navigate our doubts and define our belief. I'm going to give you a tool for that. The next week, we're going to talk about, can we really trust the Bible and why? How did it get put together? We're going to talk about that. And then the rest of the series will be populated by the questions that are most frequently submitted by you. So I encourage you to do that. You can go to, again, on the form is on Sign Up and Events on the Live Oak app or website. Or there's also some QR codes in the lobby you can scan. But you might identify a question and go, this is my question. I'm just curious about this. But sometimes, like I said, our doubts aren't intellectual. They're experiential or emotional. Life is hard. And sometimes it hits you hard and questions start showing up. And some time ago, I had one of those, I guess you'd call it a dark night of the soul. It was just, I got hit hard, and it wasn't just one punch. It was multiple punches. Just punch, punch, punch. And I was out of town, and I was in an Uber going back to the hotel, and the Uber driver was playing a worship song about great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. I remember hearing that going, I know that song. And I believe that to be true. I just don't feel it right now. We get back to the hotel, and I was just thinking about that song, and sometimes a song gets stuck in your head. Sometimes it's a very unfortunate song or a jingle. This one was a good one. As I kept kind of singing that tune in my head, and I was going up the elevator, and I got to my room, and it was pretty late, and I had the room to myself. I didn't have anybody else in my room. So I got to sleep in the next day, so I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to sleep in. So I shut the drapes real tight so no light would get in. I could sleep in, and that song was in my head, and I was like, where's that? That's in the Bible, I know. It's not just a song. And so I turned to Lamentations 3, and I read this. Yet this I call to mind. That was happening in my head. And therefore I have hope. I didn't have a ton of it right there. Because of the Lord's great love, we're not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. So I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. And I had this idea, like right now, I need to doubt my doubts more than I doubt my God. And I need to not just know this song and know this verse. I need to embed it in my life. So as much as I like sleep, and as much as I wanted to sleep in, I said, tomorrow the sun's going to come up. I know that to be true. I'm never surprised when the sun shows up in the morning. Shows up every day. But this tells me, and my experience tells me, that God shows up every day. That he's more dependable than the sunrise. That new mercies and great love and great compassion and faithfulness will show up tomorrow morning, just like the sun that shows up. So I opened the drapes. And I went to bed with the drapes wide open. So that the first thing that I experienced in the morning was the sun hitting my face. And that promise would be on my mind. The sun showed up. That means God did too. Great is his faithfulness. And he's more dependable than the sun. I don't know what you need to do to embed what you believe into your life. For me, it was as simple as I'm just going to open the drapes. And I'll be honest, there have been several nights since then where I've gone to bed with the drapes open. My neighbors are not happy about that, but it's what I need to do to remind me. Every morning, his mercies are new. Great is his faithfulness. What do you need to do to embed that belief? I want to lead us through a time of prayer. So if you could bow your head and close your eyes and just pray silently. If you've never prayed before, there's no wrong way to pray. It's just like having a conversation with God silently. And maybe you're in a season right now, it just feels like the dark night of the soul. You may have a deep belief, but you have some deep hurt, maybe some questions. I don't understand, I don't know. What I want to tell you, because of that Easter Sunday morning, when Jesus showed up, raised from the dead, because of that morning, I can count on the promise every morning. God shows up. With mercy, with love, with compassion. Great is his faithfulness. And he promises that to you. Maybe you just need to say, God, I want to believe that, even if I don't feel it. Just tell God that. Or maybe you're in a place in life where you're like Thomas. You say, God, you are my Lord and my God. And you just want to be grateful and say thank you. Thank you for raising from the dead. Thank you for dying on the cross to offer forgiveness and offer me salvation. Maybe you want to be like Thomas, but man, you're just struggling. You believe, but you have some of this unbelief, and it's kind of dual things going on in your life. Maybe this is your prayer. It's the prayer of what somebody told Jesus one time, he said, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. You believe, but there's still some of that unbelief, that doubt that struggles with. Well, define your doubt. Thomas said what he needed. What is it you need? And maybe it's just help to overcome your unbelief. Maybe you need to pray for courage to navigate your doubts, your pain, and your questions. Maybe for some of you, you've never had a day where you've said to Jesus, you are my Lord and my God. You've never given your life to him and received the life that he wants to offer, the forgiveness, to be your Lord, your leader, your Savior, your forgiver. And maybe you just pray something like, Jesus, thank you for dying on the cross to offer forgiveness. You gave your life for me, so I give my life to you. Jesus, be my Lord and be my God. Save me and lead me. God, a lot of us are in a lot of different places. Life shows up every day and it's unfair and it's hard, but thank you for your promise that you show up every morning, and we can count on that because we celebrate that happened on Easter morning. Great is your faithfulness. Help us to define our doubt. Thanks for the promise that it leads to you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Hey, a couple things real quick today. If this was the first time that you've ever said yes to Jesus, or you made a spiritual decision, or you have spiritual questions, you're interested in that, if you could scan that QR code or text Live Oak Easter to 55498, we want to help people who are new at following Jesus or interested in following Jesus get off to a great start. We think it's pretty important, and we give a lot of attention to that. So you can either do that, or there's a QR code on our Next Steps wall, which has a lot of next steps right out there. Again, we'd love to hear your questions for frequently asked questions. The more questions we get, the more we start seeing which ones are the most asked, as in frequently asked questions. And so we're going to deal with that. And then next Sunday, we're back to 2 service times, 9:30 and 11, as we start that new series called FAQ. I hope you'll be here for that. And again, if you want to get on the Gospel of John reading plan, go to the Sign Up and Events on the app or website, or there's a QR code out in the lobby or in the digital bulletin. Thanks for being here, and happy Easter.